Right now, millions of Americans are walking around with a heart that isn't pumping quite the way it should, and a huge number of them have no idea. In the time it takes us to get through this video somewhere in this country, several more people are going to hear that news for the first time, usually after months of symptoms they'd already explained away. Most of us assume heart trouble looks like one dramatic moment: crushing chest pain, a hand clutching the chest, a collapse. That's not always how it starts. Sometimes the real warning shows up somewhere much stranger, like your socks leaving a deeper mark on your ankles than they used to, or a number on the bathroom scale that jumped for no reason you can name. On this channel, we don't work off guesses or scare tactics. Every sign in this video reflects what cardiologists and major health organizations actually watch for, not internet rumors or recycled listicles. Picture someone in their 50s or 60s who still feels basically fine, a little more tired than usual maybe, blaming it on work or age or a bad night's sleep. Meanwhile, something slower and quieter is building underneath, one small system at a time. It wasn't just getting older, it was the heart itself quietly falling behind, one ordinary looking symptom at a time, none of them loud enough on their own to raise an alarm. Today, we're counting down 8 silent signs your heart may be struggling, moving from the easiest to overlook toward the one doctors say gets dismissed more than almost any other symptom on this list. That one lands at number 3, and it has nothing to do with a stethoscope and everything to do with a bathroom scale. Before we get into the list, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment with your age range and let us know which of these 8 signs, if any, already sounds familiar, either for you or for someone you love. We genuinely read these comments, and they shape which topics we cover in future videos, so don't hold back. Number 8 is persistent fatigue, the kind of bone-deep tiredness that shows up even on days you haven't done much of anything. Most people wave this one off completely. They blame a bad night's sleep, a demanding job, or simply getting older, and in plenty of cases, that's exactly what it is. But when fatigue becomes a new steady pattern rather than an occasional bad week, it can mean something else is going on. Think of your heart as a pump keeping every organ and muscle supplied with oxygen-rich blood. When that pump starts losing efficiency, it's a little like an engine trying to run a full workload on fewer cylinders. Everything still moves, but with less power behind it, and your body feels that shortfall as exhaustion.
Groups like the American Heart Association and Mayo Clinic list unusual fatigue among the earliest and most commonly reported symptoms people later connect to heart trouble, in part because it's one of the first places the body feels the effects of reduced blood flow, long before anything shows up on the outside. Many people describe it as dragging through afternoons that never used to wear them down, needing a nap just to get through a normal day. The takeaway here isn't to panic over one tired week. It's to notice a pattern, fatigue that's new, that doesn't match your sleep or activity level, and that isn't going away. Mention it at your next checkup, even if it feels too vague to bring up. A simple bonus tip: keep a 2-week note on your phone tracking your energy against what you actually did that day. That small record often reveals a pattern faster than memory alone ever will. One extra detail worth watching for is a shrinking tolerance for activities that used to feel routine. A flight of stairs, a walk to the mailbox, carrying in the groceries, since a gradual drop in what your body can handle without wearing out is often a more telling clue than tiredness by itself. But fatigue rarely travels alone, and the very next sign on this list is one you can often see with your own eyes. Number 7 is swelling in the ankles, feet, or lower legs, something doctors call peripheral edema. It's easy to blame this on standing all day, hot weather, or shoes that fit a little too snug. And sometimes that really is all it is. But when the heart can't pump forward efficiently, blood can back up in the veins of the legs, and fluid gets pushed out into the surrounding tissue. Picture a slow-moving traffic jam. When cars can't move forward fast enough, they start backing up and spilling into the shoulder. That's roughly what's happening in your lower legs when this kind of swelling shows up. The Cleveland Clinic and the American Heart Association both flag new or worsening leg swelling as a sign worth paying attention to, particularly when it doesn't fully go away overnight. Many people notice their sock lines press deep into their skin by evening, or shoes that suddenly feel tight by the afternoon, and simply assume it's from being on their feet. A useful check is to press gently on your shin for a few seconds. If a visible dent lingers afterward, that's worth mentioning to a doctor, especially if it's new. One important bonus tip: pay attention to whether the swelling is in both legs or just one. Swelling in only one leg can point to a different issue entirely, like a blood clot, and deserves prompt medical attention rather than a wait-and-see approach. It also helps to notice timing: swelling that's mild in the morning and much more noticeable by evening, especially after a normal day rather than an unusually active one, fits the pattern of fluid gradually accumulating throughout the day rather than simple muscle fatigue from standing. That fluid buildup doesn't just sit quietly in your ankles either. It moves at night, in a way most people completely misread.
Number 6 is a sudden increase in nighttime urination, something doctors sometimes call nocturia. Most people chalk this up to an aging bladder, drinking too much water before bed, or, for men, prostate changes. And again, sometimes it really is one of those things. But there's another explanation that has nothing to do with your bladder at all. During the day, when you're upright, fluid tends to pool in your legs due to gravity and sluggish circulation. At night, when you lie down, that fluid redistributes back into your bloodstream, and your kidneys process the extra volume, sending you to the bathroom more often. It's a bit like a small dam finally releasing water it had been holding back once the pressure shifts. The National Institutes of Health and the American Heart Association both note this kind of nighttime pattern as a symptom worth watching, particularly when it appears alongside daytime leg swelling, since the two symptoms are really two sides of the same underlying fluid shift, just showing up at different times of day. Many people describe getting up 2 or 3 times a night and simply assuming it's just part of getting older. The actionable step here is to notice a change in pattern rather than an absolute number. If you're suddenly up far more than your normal, and it's paired with any daytime swelling, that combination is worth mentioning to your doctor. A helpful bonus tip: keep your fluid intake steady through the day rather than avoiding water altogether, since dehydration brings its own risks. Just be mindful of large amounts right before bed. It's also worth noticing whether this new pattern showed up around the same time as any leg swelling or unusual tiredness, since symptoms that arrive together as a cluster carry more weight than any one of them appearing in isolation. There's another symptom on this list that also gets waved off as just getting older, and it has absolutely nothing to do with your age. Number 5 is a loss of appetite, nausea, or a bloated feeling after eating very little. This one is almost always blamed on digestion, something you ate, a touch of acid reflux, or ordinary stress. But when the heart's pumping efficiency drops, fluid can back up into abdominal organs, including the liver and intestines, in a way that dulls appetite and creates a sense of fullness even after a few bites. Picture a low tide reversing direction and pushing back into a stream that's supposed to be flowing outward. Fluid ends up sitting where it normally wouldn't, and that congestion is what dampens hunger. Mayo Clinic lists this kind of abdominal fullness and appetite change among the less obvious but genuine signs tied to heart function. Many people describe losing interest in meals they used to look forward to, or feeling stuffed after only a small portion. The key here is context. An occasional off day with your appetite means very little, but a persistent pattern, especially paired with other signs on this list, is worth raising with a doctor rather than quietly switching to smaller meals and moving on. A simple bonus tip is to track whether this feeling shows up regardless of what you eat, since that consistency is what separates it from ordinary indigestion. It's also worth knowing that this same congestion, over the longer term, can sometimes lead to unintentional weight loss and muscle loss rather than gain, which is exactly why doctors look at the whole pattern of appetite, weight, and energy together rather than judging any single number on its own. Before we move into the second half of the list, if this is helping connect some dots for you, take a second to hit like and subscribe so future videos land in your feed. And here's a question for the comments. Out of the 5 signs we've covered so far, how many apply to you or to someone you love? Just drop the number. Number four is a persistent cough or wheeze, especially one that shows up or worsens when you're lying flat. Most people assume this is allergies, a lingering cold, or just aging airways, and often it is exactly that. But when fluid builds up in the lungs, it behaves a bit like a sponge that's already fully saturated. Any small amount of extra liquid has nowhere to go, and it irritates the lining of the airways, triggering a cough. Lying flat makes this worse because fluid redistributes toward the lungs once gravity stops pulling it toward your legs. The American Heart Association and Cleveland Clinic both describe this kind of positional cough as a recognized sign tied to fluid buildup around the heart and lungs. Many people mention their cough shows up mostly at night or right after lying down, then eases once they sit back up, a pattern that's easy to blame on a stuffy nose and just as easy to miss entirely. If you notice this positional pattern, especially without the other usual signs of a cold, it's worth mentioning to your doctor rather than reaching for another round of allergy medication. A bonus tip that matters here: if the cough ever produces pink or frothy material, that's not a mention it at your next appointment situation. That calls for prompt medical attention. It's also worth knowing that some people experience this as wheezing rather than coughing, sometimes described informally as a kind of cardiac asthma, which is exactly why it's so often mistaken for a respiratory issue instead of a heart related one. Which brings us to the sign we teased earlier, the one hiding in the most unassuming place in your house, right there on your bathroom scale. Number three is sudden, unexplained weight gain, and this is the sign we said gets dismissed more than almost any other on this list. Doctors call it rapid fluid retention, but most people just call it a few pounds out of nowhere, and they blame a big weekend, a salty meal, or stress eating. Here's what makes it different from ordinary weight fluctuation: this isn't fat, and it isn't building slowly. When the heart can't pump efficiently, the kidneys respond by holding on to extra sodium and water, trying to compensate for a pump that's fallen behind. In a real sense, the body starts flooding itself in an attempt to keep up, and that shows up as several pounds gained within just a few days. A timeline that's simply too fast to reflect real fat gain. This is exactly why the American Heart Association and many cardiology practices ask people already living with heart failure to weigh themselves at the same time every single morning, because that daily number is one of the most reliable early warning tools available, often catching a problem days before someone would otherwise feel unwell enough to call a doctor. Many people notice their pants feel tight or the scale jumps several pounds within 2 or 3 days and assume it was just an indulgent weekend without noticing the math doesn't actually add up for ordinary eating. The takeaway here is specific and actionable. Weigh yourself at the same time each morning in similar clothing, and pay close attention if you gain several pounds within just a few days, especially if it comes along with leg swelling or shortness of breath. That combination deserves a call to your doctor, not a diet adjustment. A useful bonus tip is to keep the scale in exactly the same spot on exactly the same type of flooring, since consistency in how you measure matters more than the precise number itself. It also helps to notice where the change shows up on your body. Fluid related weight gain tends to show up as puffiness through the midsection, ankles, and fingers rather than the more even, gradual change you'd expect from eating differently, and that distinction alone is often enough to tell the two apart. Once fluid has quietly built up like this, it doesn't stay contained to your ankles or your bathroom scale. It starts reaching your mind too. Number two is difficulty concentrating, a kind of mental fog or new forgetfulness that's easy to blame on stress, poor sleep, or simply getting older. Sometimes that's exactly what it is. But when the heart's output drops, blood flow to the brain can be reduced as well, and shifts in sodium levels from fluid retention can play a role too. It's a bit like a device running on a weaker signal. Everything still functions, but a little slower and a little less sharp than it used to be. The Cleveland Clinic and American Heart Association both note that cognitive changes like this are underrecognized as a heart related sign, especially in older adults where they're often mistaken for ordinary aging or early memory changes. Interestingly, family members often notice this shift before the person experiencing it does. A parent seeming a bit slower to follow a conversation or more forgetful with small daily details than they used to be. If you notice new confusion or fogginess, especially alongside other signs from this list, it's worth raising with a doctor rather than filing it away as simply getting older. A bonus tip worth trying: notice whether the fog gets worse with physical exertion and improves with rest, since that pattern can help distinguish it from other unrelated causes of forgetfulness. Sleep quality is worth watching too. Fragmented, restless sleep caused by nighttime breathlessness or frequent bathroom trips can compound this fog on its own, so improving those other symptoms sometimes clears up more mental sharpness than people expect. Every sign so far has actually been building toward the one your body uses to tell you, in the clearest way it has available, that it's struggling to keep up. Number one is shortness of breath, showing up during activities that used to be easy, when lying flat, or as a sudden gasping feeling that wakes you up in the middle of the night. This is the sign we teased at the very start of this video, and it deserves to be understood not as a single isolated symptom, but as the point where everything else on this list actually converges. The fatigue at number 8 reflects your body running on less oxygen. The swelling and nighttime bathroom trips reflect fluid your body can't manage properly. The appetite loss reflects that same fluid congesting your organs. The cough reflects it reaching your lungs. The weight gain reflects the fluid volume itself building up. The brain fog reflects reduced blood flow reaching your brain. And breathlessness is where all of that finally becomes impossible to ignore because your heart and lungs work as one connected system. When the pump falls behind, fluid backs into the lungs, much like water backing into a basement. Once a sump pump can no longer keep pace, and that fluid physically limits how much air you can move. Health organizations, including the CDC and American Heart Association, consistently point to breathlessness, particularly when it's tied to lying flat or interrupts sleep, as one of the clearest signals connected to heart failure. Many people describe needing an extra pillow or two just to breathe comfortably at night or waking up gasping for air without ever connecting it back to their heart. There's usually a progression to this too, and it's worth knowing what it tends to look like. It often starts subtly as breathlessness only during real exertion, climbing stairs, carrying something heavy, walking briskly. Over time, for some people, it can start showing up during much lighter activity or even while lying flat, which is exactly why doctors ask so specifically about pillows, sleeping position, and nighttime symptoms rather than just asking, "Are you short of breath?" That progression, more than any single moment of breathlessness, is what tends to matter most. The most important takeaway on this entire list is this: pay closest attention when positional or nighttime breathlessness shows up alongside any of the other 7 signs we've covered, because it's that overlapping pattern doctors take most seriously, far more than any single symptom standing alone. And here's the genuinely hopeful part: heart failure caught through a pattern like this, especially early, is very often manageable. With the right treatment, medication, and lifestyle adjustments, a great many people go on to live full, active lives once it's identified and properly addressed. Identification is very often the hardest part. What comes after tends to be far more within your control than people expect. Through the right combination of medication, monitoring, and everyday changes like managing salt intake and staying appropriately active, a great many people go on to feel noticeably better within weeks, not years, once their heart finally gets the support it's been quietly asking for. None of these 8 signs on their own means you're facing heart failure. An occasional tired afternoon or a pair of tight shoes doesn't mean anything alarming by itself. What actually matters is the pattern. When several of these show up together and none of them has an obvious everyday explanation, that combination is worth a conversation with your doctor. Catching it early is exactly what gives you the most options and the best outcomes because heart failure is a condition doctors can actively manage, not simply something to brace for. If someone in your life has been quietly brushing off a few of these signs, a parent, a spouse, a close friend who keeps saying they're just tired, send them this video today. It costs you 30 seconds, and it might be exactly the nudge that gets them to a doctor sooner rather than later, while there's still the most room to act. Next time, we're breaking down the 4 blood pressure numbers your doctor actually pays attention to beyond the top and bottom reading, and what each one is quietly telling you about your heart. If you found this useful, subscribe and let us know in the comments which of these 8 signs surprised you the most. This video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Please consult your doctor for personal guidance.